So it's been a full year since I've been riding the Yamaha e-bike. I've ridden it through all 4 seasons. So I figured there's a pretty good time to give my assessment of what the experience has been like and what I loved about it. So most don't know that Yamaha has actually been in the e-bike game for over 30 years. They just put out their 30th edition e-bike last year, but they only started distributing in Canada in the last 2 years. So it is relatively new, at least to the Canadian market. The motor, I think it easily fits into that category of the Bosch or the Shimano. Lots of power, not very noisy. Yamaha's motor is also used in all of Giant's e-bikes. This certainly fits in that category of the heavier bike that's in like the 52-pound range. 4 gears on this one as far as the assist goes. So 1 probably really replaces the extra weight. 2 gives you a little tiny bit of a push. 3, you start to really feel that extra push and make you feel a little bit more superhuman. 4 is kind of the full out mode, which is, to be honest, when you're riding these really big bikes, full power mode, the turbo, it's kind of what you're looking for. You're riding a bike this heavy, you don't necessarily want to be feeling that extra weight. So until you're in like the 3rd and 4th assist, you don't really get over that and just start thinking about your ride. One of the biggest adjustments for me on this bike was a smaller wheel size. I've been riding 29s for over a decade. The wheels on this bike are 27.5. It's a bit of a slacker geometry, longer chain stay, but this thing corners really well. Done a bit of experimenting of modifying it to make it a mullet. I had an extra 29 fork, so I put that on the front. I think the mullet might honestly be like the sweet spot for an e-bike, so I just kind of wanted to try it. The geometry of this bike didn't really make a ton of sense for that. It was a fun little experiment. So a few things like about the design, your top tube split. So that's something that Yamaha has traditionally done on all moto bikes. My first impression was, okay, this is different, looks a little strange. The more I used it, the more I photographed it, the more I was like, you know what, this is actually kind of a really cool bike. I didn't make many tweaks to this bike. I put on the Squidworks big platform flat pedals. I added the fender to the forks. I added the 1-up carbon e-bike bar and the race face cash money stem. Actually, they might have the nicest series of stems going right now. Did put a minion on the back after doing some really techie, slippery, steep climbs in Cape Breton on this thing. I knew I wanted something a little beefier. So one of the best things about this bike has certainly been the suspension. So I tried the Moro 5 and then went up to the Moro 7. The Moro 7 has a RockShox Lyric on the front, super deluxe rear shock on the back. And to be honest, if any of the heavier, more high-powered e-bikes I've tried, this suspension feels real cushy. That's one of the most pleasant surprises probably of this bike has been the suspension overall. I have tested the distance on this. I usually typically ride this in like the 3rd or 4th assist. We don't have a ton of elevation around here, but either way, I was pushing like 39, 40 kilometers. This display doesn't tell me exactly what I can get for mileage here, and there's no app that connects to it reliably. So without that, you just kind of have to play it safe. And I think the 40K range is probably as far as you really want to push it without risking having to push home a little bit. And these are heavy bikes. You don't want to be pushing them home. And I think every brand or manufacturer in the e-bike world right now is probably a little guilty of not knowing exactly what probably makes sense on this little visual display. This thing not really having a whole lot of value as far as like what information it's showing me here. Could we potentially put it back like into the frame, especially where we have this giant split here? That's something I can glance at every half an hour. I don't need to glance at it every 3 seconds. First year down has been awesome. I'm really curious to see what this feels like in year 2 as I kind of get this one dialed in. This thing has been a blast, especially in the yard. It's one of those things like if you can do maybe 8 laps in the yard on your acoustic bike, you can jump on one of these and maybe it's 30 instead. And it's just one of those things I don't mind plugging in some headphones and just kind of having a bit of a session on something like this. That's really just all about the fun at the end of the day. You still get a fantastic workout on the e-bike. It's a little different. I find like one of those big rides that you can do like just say 30 or 40 kilometers. Your heart rate is getting up just as high as it would on a normal acoustic bike, but the difference is you just don't get the leg burn. So I typically kind of would break up my workout routine, take the e-bike every now and then just to have some fun. And it's just one of those things that just gets you out more. So those days that maybe you do need a little bit of a rest, that's the day to take the e-bike out and still get some fresh air while the weather's great. So overall, it's been a blast. Definitely recommend you check them out. What's up, girl? Hey.